Yesterday. Breakfast at Spike's cave. Spike didn't have any tables for ponies, so we were all gathered on the floor, eating breakfast, thoughtfully procured by Lionheart late in the night. I wasn't sure where he acquired the rather large bundle of food, which included fresh hay, vegetables, and flowers, but I had my suspicions, and I wasn't about to ask. The majority of Spike's guests had traveled a long and often dangerous way to get to the top of the mountain, and most of us had been suffering various level of exhaustion the night before. So shortly after the scene between the Grimfeathers, and with promises of long, important discussions and plans for the following morning, most everyone had slowly found themselves a place to drift off to sleep. Now, much better rested, and with a company of friends and heroes, those around me were taking to the morning meal with a lively energy. Calamity was in particularly good spirits. After Velvet's and Lifebloom's attention and a good night's rest, his wing had finally regained enough strength to allow him to fly. Not well, and not fast, but he was hovering everywhere like a pro. "This world is way too filled with morning people," Gloom mumbled, her mane drooping over her face, but not far enough to conceal her scowl. "What are you bringing to the fight?" the Amber Mare asked Gloom, with a level of enthusiasm that clearly didn't sit well with the odd zebra. "Before you get too ahead of yourself," her khaki-coated friend cautioned. "We don't even know there is a fight." The Amber Mare rolled her eyes. "Of course there's going to be a fight. It's not like they're just planning on giving the Enclave a good talking to." Shifting back to Bloom. "So, are you a sniper? Medical zebra? Fight with your hooves like Zenith? Isn't she awesome?" "If we are fighting, then I will fight," Gloom answered gravely. "With blade and poison. And with my life until they kill me. Then, probably raise up as a vengeful spirit and haunt whoever's left." The Amber Mare raised an eyebrow, scooting slightly away. "Alrighty then." "If this is a battle," Godwinna said, sitting just a little ways from me, "then my talons have much to lend to the fight." Knowing God, the word lend was meant literally. We've been collecting a significant amount of resources and tools over these last few weeks. "Yeah, that orb vault had turned out to be the ultimate treasure map," Butcher, who is now Blackwing's second-in-command, revealed, ignoring a displeased look from God. "Last week, we were all able to break into an old zebra vault and get at its armory. Check out some of the exotic new weapons we found sealed up in that place." Butcher showed off some of the new Talon's weapons, proudly. "This nasty little melee number is something the zebras call a chainsaw," Butcher announced. "Never gonna be a replacement for little Gilda, of course, but damn." After rolling her eyes, Blackwing chose to ignore God's displeasure, showing off the new addition to her own arsenal. Zenith immediately identified a strange weapon. "A crossbow," she intoned, "an assassin's weapon, silent and deadly." "Like a fart?" Reggie snarked. Then suddenly her eyes lit up. She turned towards her mother. Godwinna pinched the bridge of her beak with her talons. Her eyes scrunched shut. "No." "No what?" Reggie protested. "I haven't—" "No," God reiterated. "I ain't letting you have the crossbow, so you can name it the fart." Reggie whined. "But Mom—" I felt myself blush as I was suddenly reminded that the gun-slinging Griffin hero was indeed just an adolescent. I refocused on eating my flowers. Good flowers. Yes, pretty and tasty. Just found an underground research facility where ponies were attempting to apply zebra alchemical techniques to coal, Blackwing was telling Calamity. It seems they were hoping to create everlasting coal. They never succeeded, But they did manage to produce an alchemically treated coal that burns twice as fast, and about 10 times as hot. Word of warning, Godwin said, leaning over to me. If you ever think of having kids, beware. No matter how much you love them, eventually, they will become teenagers. Next to me, Calamity snorted. I merely stammered, throwing a bit, no. Children, not really in the plans. I mean, even if there was time, and even if Homage was here, it wasn't like either of us was going to get the other pregnant. In fact, I was pretty sure pregnancy was right out with any pony I'd ever fancied. Or griffin. Oh, and aren't these flowers delicious? Yes, stare at my plate. Munch, munch, munch. Yay, for breakfast. Oh, wow, Gloom sing-songed. Little Pip likes mares. You can tell. I nearly choked. What? Why do you say that? I wasn't doing anything. My eyes drifted back and forth as I thought quickly. I was not checking out Godwina, or her daughter, or any mare. I'd made certain of it. You were eating flowers, the strange zebra pointed out. So, Zephyr butted in, Gloom, I eat flowers. You eat flowers. But it was a lesbian way she was eating the flowers. What? That, Zephyr informed her, makes no sense. Turning to me, Zenith's daughter advised, Don't listen to her, little Pip. Gloom is strange. I nodded, unable to find my voice, a flower petal clinging to my lower lip. Zenith's exotic voice whispered behind me, If you look at my daughter, I will paralyze you. Gah! I wouldn't. Never. But it didn't help that sometimes I sneaked a glance at Zenith herself. I found myself blushing almost painfully as Homage's tease about a threesome replayed in my forebrain. I spun about, but Zenith wasn't there anymore. So instead, I sunk low and tried to focus on anything but mares. Of any species. Or flowers. Other conversations were continuing all around me. In a far corner, I saw Ditzy Doo engaged in deep-looking discussion with Bark and Saw. You want to know what? Bark and Saw asked. What kind of buck this is? The ghoul Pegasus scribbled on her chalkboard, scribbling something in response. My ears caught a plaintive, draconic rumble on the other side of the chamber. Mommy? Pyrelight had flown up to Spike's eye level. A pink-filled mouse ball clenched in her talons. The pink-purple and green dragon was staring at the rodent inside with a retching mix of emotions. You're not my mommy, he complained. You can't be. He reached out and gingerly touched the pet ball with a claw tip. Pyrelight nodded sagely. The mouse simply squeaked. What sort of big plans? Calamity asked God. I had missed the shift in the conversation, but I didn't care. I clung to the new discussion like a life preserver. With Shattered Hoof under my wing, and the community you seem so intent on building around it, I've been thinking that maybe it's time to hang up my holster, Godwina admitted. Mercenary work is a young griffin's game. She turned over to her daughter, and the empty space next to her that Cage would have naturally filled. I've accomplished more while running with the Talons than I ever did in the field. I'd have to be pretty blind in both eyes not to see that I have the opportunity to build something lasting here, she added, and to put a handsome profit in the process. My ears perked up, my blush receding. This had become interesting. I felt a spark of hope born in Godwina's words. It doesn't take a tactical genius to realize that the Enclave is building up for some huge battle in Philadelphia sometime very soon, Godwina pointed out. And I'd be willing to gamble by the time that this little powwow isn't unrelated. So here's the deal. I'm offering the full support of my talents and our resources. But in return, I want total freedom to take over Red Eye's resources in Philadelphia. Said what now? Clemity asked, as I fought to pick my jaw up off the floor. Cooperation would be appreciated, Godwin said, but in the very least, you and your allies don't get in my way, and that includes the Applejacks Rangers. What exactly are you planning? I asked. Expand on what y'all already pushing me to do, God claimed. The area around Shattered Hoof and Junction R7 is becoming a civilization. We're gaining a population, an orchard, a water talisman, everything we need to become one of the biggest thriving communities in the wasteland. Well, yes, I had kind of been thinking along those lines, I had to admit. So why stop there? Godwin asked. By taking over Red Eye's factories, we could seriously have a shot at rebuilding. A real new Equestria. Not that poisoned Unity crap with Shattered Hoof as its new counterlot. I blinked. Well, God's plan was definitely ambitious. Still, I'd love to see you take over Red Eye's operations, but only so long as you don't run them the way Red Eye did, through barbarism and slavery. Godwin waved a wing. Settle your mind, little Pip. I ain't looking to become the new Red Eye. Wasteland's seen enough of that kind of thinking. I felt myself let go of the tension I realized was building in me. A new Equestria. I pondered the idea. A new Canterlot. But who will be the new princess? You? Clemity asked. In God we trust? Godwina Grimfeather shook her head. Monarchies are a pony thing. I'm looking for something more inclusive, more open to other people. She looked to her daughter, warming to the topic. A republic, perhaps, fashioned in the imagery of the legendary Griffin Clan Council. No princess? I asked again, still trying to wrap my brain around the idea. Not even an overmare? Nope, Reggie said. Just an arbiter, for when the heads of the clans can't agree. Mother would be perfect for that. We don't play politics, and we don't take sides. A crooked grin spread across God's beak. To be honest, I've already sent representatives to the Buffalo, and I was hoping Zenith might serve as an intermediary with the Angels. Me? Zenith peeped, seeming once again to appear from nowhere. She seemed about to protest, but stopped, looking confused. Angels? I had heard that name before, just recently, in fact. That would be us, Zephyr called out, apparently having been listening in. Either that, or the name caught her attention. After we started making dash, like you taught us, the others decided that we need a new tribal name. We couldn't use Dad's anymore. Zenith's eyes widened. They wanted to name us something fierce, a name that would demand respect, Zephyr claimed. So I thought, since we're living beneath a giant Doom Bunny, why not name ourselves after him? You named the new tribe after Doom Bunny? Zenith looked pale, which was quite a feat for a zebra. I didn't even know the buffalo still existed, Calamity whispered to me. Velvet Remedy chimed in. Not everything Red Eye was trying to do was bad, she claimed. I too would like to take charge of part of Red Eye's work. God scolded, opening her beak to protest, but closed it when Velvet Remedy said, his plans for schools and medical centers. Y'all are dividing up something that ain't ours, Calamity warned the two of them. I was mostly interested in the factories, God admitted, but I have the Talons and the ex-raiders of Shattered Hoof to help. No offense, but how is one pony going to build schools and bring education and medicine to all of the wasteland? Velvet Remedy blushed uncertainly. I think I have the alicorns. God blinked. Zenith scooted closer to Velvet. If you do this, then would you please start in Glyphmark? Glyphmark needs a school, and a medical center. She looked over at Zephyr. It has a doctor, and... Zenith looked back at Velvet Remedy. Her face hardened with determination. I have decided. I wish to become their teacher. This is something I can do for them. Velvet's eyes widened, as did her smile. She moved to hug Zenith. But the zebra had anticipated this, and swiftly tapped the ground. I heard something break, and the zebra vanished in a puff of unhuggable smoke. Velvet plopped back down, looking shocked for a good 10 seconds before recovering. You're right, Gadwina, she finally said. Even if I do have the alicorns, I will still need help. So, I'll make you a deal. The griffin raised her eyebrow in response. All ears. Velvet offered. You help me do this, and in honor of Cage, I'll use the name he came up with, and I'll name the Philadelphia school after him. Calamity tried to caution, but seemed to give up. Leaning towards me, he muttered, I really hope your plan involves both defeating the Enclave and Red Eye's armies in Philadelphia. He looked at God and Velvet Remedy uneasily. The name Cage came up with? God asked, confused. She looked at her daughter, questioningly. The followers of the apocalypse. Today, walking on clouds was weird. Unfortunately, I didn't have time to truly get over my discomfort. I just had to accept the general wrongness of it and press on. You sure about splitting up like this? Calamity yelled over the driving wind and the sound of the defense array. Above us, Spike was wheeling and dancing, trying to keep away from the blasts of the defense cannons by placing the attacking raptors between himself and the base. Don't worry about me, Velvet Remedy called back, smiling. This old unicorn's still got a few tricks. Old unicorn, Calamity called back. Where? Hiding behind Velvet? A cacophony of rending metal and explosions marked the second raptor to be taken out by friendly fire. Fortunately, the Enclave's soldiers left to operate the defense array were proving too novice to skillfully avoid their own ships and still hit Spike. Unfortunately, a few of their shots were indeed hitting Spike, and his cover was dwindling. We need to go, I called back to the two of them before charging off. Y'all better be okay when I find you again, Calamity told Velvet sternly. The beautiful unicorn smiled and shook her head. Of course I will. They'll come for you, Calamity said, not for the first time. Let them, Velvet replied. They'll underestimate me. Everyone underestimates me. Calamity and Velvet Remedy paused, looking into each other's eyes, embracing with a passionate kiss. A minute later, they broke apart. Velvet galloped off in a second direction, and Calamity in a third. Yesterday. Sorry I'm late. The most wonderful voice in Equestria apologized. Did I miss the briefing? Homage's voice brightened the room, lifting my spirits. It was as if my heart had been held aloft by a flock of butterflies. Nope, Calamity said to the sprite bot that the voice of my love was coming from. We just about to start. Glad you could make it. Oh, thank you, I gushed at Spike. My eyes began to tear in joy. I was going to have one last time with Homage. Maybe not physically, but it was more than I had hoped for. He stroked his spines back, looking a little embarrassed by the volume of emotion I was pouring out. You're welcome. Everyone in the cave was staring. It was nothing. Really. Oh, but it's not nothing, I insisted. It's everything. I couldn't help him. I threw myself around one of his ankles, Thank you, thank you, thank you! If you start kissing Spike, Homage said, her voice sparkling with amusement, I'm leaving the room. I stopped, my eyes turning to the crowd, a blush rising. Lil Pip, y'all were saying how about the Enclave depends on the cloud curtain? Clement reminded me tactfully. You know, the plan? Oh yes, that. I pulled myself back up, brushing my mane out of my face, and staring back at all the eyes turned towards me. This was it. This was the plan. Still, the little pony in my head wouldn't stop bouncing around like Pinkie Pie, cheering Spike and crying out Homage's name. The Enclave will annihilate every living soul in Philadelphia and bury the industrial progress made there under melted rubble, if they aren't stopped, I reminded them. If Red Eye's forces win, the surviving Pegasi will end up enslaved, or with their heads on pikes. And Stern's talons aren't likely to stop with just one successful victory. God added, with Red Eye gone, she'll be looking to take over his whole operation. Defeated the Enclave's biggest force? She'll take the war back to the clouds once she smells weakness. This is the griffin who wiped out Father's tribe, isn't it? Zephyr asked. Zenith scowled, nodding affirmatively. Well then, you can't win, the younger zebra insisted. Do you have any idea when the Enclave are going to attack? One of the Applejack's rangers asked. Yes, I told him. Tomorrow morning. The news was greeted by several voices of dismay. It'll be the largest, fiercest battle of Equestria has ever endured since the Great War, I reiterated. And, unfortunately, I'm going to miss it. What? The sound was a chorus. We have a chance to end this, I told them. Not just one battle, but the entire threat of the Enclave entirely. Forever. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to lead a group into the Enclave's military base, in Navarro, break into the single Pegasus project, and tear down the cloud curtain. Wait, Morning Frost said, tossing up a hoof. You're going to take on Navarro. I was stationed there, you know. It's the biggest military base they've got. Do you know how many troops they have stationed there? How about the Thunderhead and the Raptors, the Shield, the Defense Array? The Enclave brought the war down to us, Lionheart announced, sending Silverbell as deep as she could get beneath Ditsy-Doo's wing. We are bringing it back to them. Most of the troops won't be at Navarro, I claimed. We have two advantages going in. First, the element of surprise. The Enclave isn't expected forces from below to attack them on their home turf. Had to be a Pegasus appropriate word for that. I pushed forward. This will be an unexpected tactic. Y'all can say that again, Calamity neighed. Second is the fact that tomorrow morning, Navarro will be functioning on a skeleton crew, I revealed. Every available Pegasi from Navarro has been used to bolster the military force poised to hit Philadelphia. Until that battle is over, there will be almost no pony left at the base. I looked to God. This is the information Cage gave his life for. The one opportunity, the one window of weakness that we can exploit to take over the SPP and kill the Enclave for good. Godwin and Grimfeathers drank that in without comment. Once inside the SPP shield, it might take hours to figure out. We can't count on what I'm going to do in there happening in time to save the people of Philadelphia. So, I need your help, most of you, in the battle for Philadelphia, I told them. I have a plan, but, look, what I'm about to ask of all of you is more than any pony has the right to ever ask of anyone. But for the sake of every pony in the room, and everyone out here, both below and above the curtains, I'm asking, no, I'm begging you for help. We wouldn't be here if we hadn't already said yes, kid, one of the Applejack's Rangers announced. Get on with it. There were agreements of support around the cave. I took a deep breath, and with that, I laid it out, starting with the part I felt the worst about. "Ditsy-do," I said solemnly, focusing on the ghoul Pegasus. She was listening from the back, one wing wrapped around her adopted daughter. "I hate this more than anything, but I need to put you right in the heart of the battle." My heart seized as Silverbell's eyes went wide. "Mommy?" she asked timidly. Forcing myself forward, I told her, "I need you to perform another sonic radboom, this time right in the middle of the conflict." I quickly added, "But I want you to do so with as little risk as possible. If you can take out some of the Enclave ships, that's wonderful, but the goal is to clear the clouds over the battle zone. So if you can pull it off at a higher altitude, keep yourself out of the firefight. That would be best." Silverbell was looking at her mother, with a painful expression. "But who will catch you?" "Lionheart will," I managed, looking towards the Royal Canterlot Ghoul. "I'm sending you and Mouse into Philadelphia. Your mission is to wreak as much havoc against the Enclave as possible, keeping their forces off Ditsy-do, and to catch her if she needs it. Once the sonic radboom happens, I want all three of you out of the area as swiftly as possible." I had to admit, I was feeling a lot better about sending Ditsy-do to Philadelphia than I had in the days before, now that we had Lion and Mouse. "But for now, I need you to get Ditsy-do to the Philadelphia crater. To Ditsy. Wait there until it's time. No pony should bother you there. And you should be glowing again in no time." I hated this, but there was no other way. Looking at the lovable ghoul, Pegasus, I whispered to myself, "We can't lose you." I realized I was banking an awful lot on Ditsy-do being able to explode twice. Ditsy-do gave the cutest salute, then turned to Silverbell, writing something on her chalkboard. The little filly nodded, embracing her new mother in a teary farewell. I sent all my prayers to Celestia and Luna, that they would only be apart for a day. Velvet Remedy wrapped her tail around Silverbell, as Lionheart trotted up to her. The little pink ball wheeled across the room, in the wake, as the two ghouls walked out of the cave. "Hold on," I called out to them. The two ghouls stopped, looking over their shoulders. The little ball smacked into Ditsy-do's left hind leg, and rebounded with a squeak. "Before you go, I need to speak to Ditsy-do in private. I need all of them to wait just a little longer. Don't worry. It won't be long." Ditsy-do nodded patiently, and sat down. Silverbell pushed herself free of Velvet's tail, and scurried over to be with her wall-eyed mother. I swallowed hard, and steeled myself for the rest. One of the worst parts was over. "God, I need you and your talents to clear the sky over Tenpony Tower, and keep it that way." Reggie protested. "We're not going to be in the battle." "Hopefully not," I thought in response. "You're critical to it," is what I told her. She didn't seem particularly mollified. "And what are you offering in return?" God asked. A few of the ponies around us muttered unpleasantly, but I knew God wasn't trying to squeeze me in my time of crisis. She just needed an offering, if only a token one, to save face. After all, the Talons weren't crusaders. They were a business. "How about an opportunity to expand your influence in the Tenpony Tower?" I offered. "I own what used to be a cheese shop. Perfect place for God's talons, or a new Canterlot to set up a satellite office." Homage's voice rang out over the sprite-bot, sounding slightly tinny. "Oh, little Pip, what are you planning?" From her tone, she already knew. "Lifebloom." I turned to the one member of the Twilight Society we had with us. "You're going to have to convince your friends at Tenpony Tower. Once the clouds are cleared in both places, we need the Twilight Society to bring the power of Celestia 1 down on that battlefield." Lifebloom blinked slowly, then nodded. "You can count on me." He added, "On us." What's Celestia 1? One of the Wasteland Crusaders asked. Lightbloom explained, leaving out the finer details, but the reality was quickly clear. Tenpony Tower had the ability to enact a megaspell capable of tactical precision, and I was going to unleash it against both sides. We're taking back what they stole from us, the Amber Crusaders said in awe, and then using it as a weapon against them. Yes. I let myself smile just a little, at the wonder in her voice, before continuing. Meanwhile, a group of us will be hitting Navarro. Once we get to the heart of it, the SPP central hub, I'm going inside. I'll be analyzing the cloud curtain, then using the towers to tear away as much of it as I can, without threatening the Pegasi with starvation. Morning Frost and Sunglint objected. I shared a glance with Spike before confiding. There is a final step to this plan, one that will compensate for the loss of crops, but it's going to take extra time to implement, possibly months. But we do have that covered. I looked to Morning Frost. You were stationed at Navarro. Why don't you and Calamity give us an overview of what we are attacking? Morning Frost floated up her pip leg and brought up a map of Navarro from her database. Velvet Remedy concentrated, her horn lighting up. The illusionary magic she previously used on her concert light shows now trained to present a mirage of Navarro that everyone could see. It looked like a cloud-bisected egg, the small red alicorn shield of the SPP Central Hub at the cone, and the blue Enclave energy shield surrounding the base like a shell. We could make out several clusters of buildings, including barracks, the science center, and even a collection of solar dishes, like those outside of Hope. The base got its power from a combination of those dishes and a field of thunderclouds, the former largely powered by a blue dome and a defense array. Navarro was set into a higher patch of clouds than the cloud curtain itself. Between the two, the ominous bulk of Thunderhead Victorious stalked the sky, barely moving. The Victorious's 4 raptors prowled around it. And that's our target, Paladin Strawberry Lemonade surmised. We're going to help you take on that. She sounded impressed, and a little confused. How? We can't fly. Yeah, the Amber Mare jumped up. How can we help? The Wasteland Crusaders are ready. Her 2 friends agreed. I had no answer for them. I honestly hadn't intended for them to be here. Pirate gave a little hoot and swooped down to whistle into Velvet Remedy's ear, her eyes brightening. Maybe you could, Velvet Remedy suggested. Well, not fly, exactly, but Spike. She shifted her attention to the dragon. Did you tell us that Twilight Sparkle had a cloud-walking spell? Would there be any chance that spell is somewhere in all these books? I'd forgotten about that. With a thrill, I realized that the cloud-walking spell should also allow me to hack into the Enclave computers. Wouldn't help me with their locks, since it wouldn't alter my telekinesis or my tools, but it was still a huge improvement. Spike coughed, then puffed up proudly. Hey, I was the #1 assistant of the nerdiest unicorn in all of Equestria. Have you seen this library? Wonderful! Lightbloom jumped up with a grin. Point the way. If you've got it, I can learn it. Velvet Remedy cocked her head, staring at him. With a playful, put-out voice, she asked, Really? Is there any spell you can't learn? Not so far, he admitted. Spike looked the white unicorn over, curiously. How was that? Is your special talent? Is it magic? Lightbloom laughed and shook his head, his crimson and scarlet curls quivering. Oh, no. I'm nowhere near as powerful as even little Pip, much less a pony like Twilight Sparkle. Powerful? Me? Since when? But I am exceptionally versatile. Turns out, that's my special gift. Learning. Blushing a little, he confessed. I can learn pretty much anything I set my mind to, if I had the resources. He could have learned anything, and he chose to become a medical pony, a healer. Wow, I hadn't even... Wait, idea! Spike, do you, by any miracle, have the Ministry of Magic's research into Spell in a Box? I think so, the dragon said. After the briefing, I'll see if I can't find it. Zenith spoke up, gently. And I can craft some Bloodwing talismans, she offered. But I will not be joining you in this fight, little Pip. Calamity, Velvet, and I turned towards our zebra friend in surprise. Zenith shook her head solemnly. My place is in Philadelphia. Stern murdered my husband, destroyed our tribe, she reminded us, no longer trying to hide who she was from Zenith. Enslaved me, and thrust my foal into the cold, brutal wasteland, without protection. If this battle is going to be the end of Stern, then I must be there. I nodded, frowning a little, but accepting that completely. Zenith was right. This was her story to play out, no matter how much I wished her to be by my side. Now, remember folks, Calamity spoke up, stomping a hoof for attention, before flying into the center of the room to hover above the floating mirage of Navarro. These soldiers ain't the bad guys. They're the enemy only in that they're shooting at us. And it ain't like we ain't inviting their home. He started over the assembly of ponies and others. These soldiers ain't done nothing wrong. Many of them will be fresh recruits still in training. They ain't done nothing to harm Equestria or its people. The ones who have, they're all going to be fighting Philadelphia. And the pony in charge, he choked just a little. Colonel Autumn Leaf, the one who ordered the Friendship City massacre and almost every other atrocity, he's dead, folks. We ain't going into Navarro looking for blood. We only killing in self-defense. Calamity's words were forceful and brooked no argument. We ain't going into slaughter. We're just punching a hole. Another reason I didn't want Lionheart involved in Navarro. And now came another hard part. I turned to Strawberry Lemonade and to the 11 other Applejacks Rangers. And, to answer your previous question, you're not going to be part of the assault on Navarro. Philadelphia, then? Again, I shook my head. You're going to be here. Here? Strawberry Lemonade asked, sounding disappointed. Here! Spike blurted. I nodded. Yes, here. Right in this cave. I looked up at Spike. The group of you are going to defend this cave. There's extremely important secrets from anyone who might take the opportunity to attack while Spike's gone. Gone, Spike repeated in disbelief. Yes, I told him. We need you with us. We can't do this without you, Spike. It's time you stop watching. He looked between me and the Applejacks Rangers. But what would Twilight Sparkle have done? I asked. From his expression, I didn't need to say any more. Wait, Calamity said. You're sending Spike into battle against the Victorious and 4 Raptors. Doesn't the Enclave call those dragon killers? Spike chuckled wearily. Guess this was preordained. To be honest, I always found that name insulting. He made a wave with his claws. Part of me always wanted to put them in their place for that. Morning Frost looked at Velvet Remedy's illusion of Navarro, then up at Spike. Do you think you can take down the Enclave shield? Spike lowered his head, staring at the data on her pitbuck. Magically enhanced Type 6 photonic resonance barrier. Let me do the math. Assistant to the most geeky unicorn indeed. He sat up, making an elaborate show of counting on his claws, occasionally mumbling something like, "Carry the 3, before leaning back, giving us a wide, dangerous, sharp teeth-filled grin. Oh yeah, he purred. Probability of hindrance, 0%. I couldn't help but grin. And you 3, I turned to the Wasteland Crusaders. I want you here, helping protect this place, just in case. And what are the chances of someone attacking this cave in the few hours you are gone? Hopefully none, I prayed. But while I can't explain why, this cave is the single most important place in Equestria, and it must be protected at all costs. Paladin Strawberry Lemonade shook off her disappointment and stepped up. Then we will guard it with our lives. You can count on Applejack's Rangers. None shall pass. Yes, everything was shaping up better than I could have expected. I'm pretty sure I can't get through the shield around the central hub, though, Spike added curiously. What are you going to do once you get there? I opened my muzzle, then shut it again. In truth, the whole thing was a gamble, an educated guess, fueled as much by faith as fact. I'm going to do what I do best, I told him simply. Drop something heavy on it? Calamity asked. Get shot full of holes? Velvet Remedy offered wearily. Stare at flanks? Reggie snarked. The voice of homage floated out of the sprite bot. Orgasm? Eep? Homage! My ears and cheeks burned like Celestia's sun. When I had fallen on the floor, and why were my legs twitching like that? Scribbling swiftly, Ditsy-Do offered up. Squeak and blush. I could hear the giggles. Ah. Okay, fine. I whimpered, giving up. I'm going to do something I'm sort of good at. I sighed, covering my face. God, what have I to deal with? Hey, leave me out of this one, kid. Today, Velvet Remedy was the first to reach their destination, the Enclave broadcasting station, where the Enclave was tied to the radio override system of the SPP. I'm sorry, she sang out. Pardon me. Excuse me. As if she dropped each of the technicians in turn with her anesthetic spell. She turned around and propped the doors open wide behind her, then proceeded to look over the controls. Now, if I were to shut down everything button, where would I be? She glanced up as the propped open doors swung shut again, then back down at her work. Aha! With a jab of her hoof, the ROS began to reboot. Within 2 minutes, the overriding Enclave broadcast was back on the air. Velvet Remedy trotted over to the microphone, checking the settings on the soundboard, then cleared her throat. Hello, Equestrians, and good morning, she said sweetly. Now, I know I'm not DJ Pwn 3, but I am a good friend. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I entertained you for a little while. I have some wonderful new music that I wrote myself. But, first let me tell you a little about what's going on in the wasteland today. The doors to the station barged open, half a dozen Enclave soldiers bursting in. Without skipping a beat, Velvet purred. Starting with the young bucks and mares in the Enclave, who just came in and shut me down. She waved at them with her tail. Pull up a place, boys. Let me play some real music for you. Back away from the controls, lady, one of the Enclave soldiers ordered. Surrender. You're unarmed, and if I see your horn start to glow, we all shoot. Don't make us kill you. Velvet Remedy looked put out, pouting with her lower lip, and fluttered her eyes. But boys, I don't need guns or magic. I have something with me that's much more powerful than those. Velvet smiled pleasantly. Kindness. The Enclave soldiers looked at each other. One of them started laughing. Kindness? What the hell kind of weapon is that? There was a flash in the center of the room. With the flash appeared a purple alicorn, her horn glowing, her hooves ringed with all the ammunition and power packs of the Enclave soldiers' magical armor. The air shimmered behind the talkative one, revealing a midnight blue alicorn with a silky, frost-colored mane. The oddly maned alicorn leaned close and whispered, "The kind that earns you friends." Yesterday. They need to see, I told Spike, after the mission briefing had broken up. I expect a resistance. Instead, Spike agreed readily. I've already shown Ditsy Do, he confessed. As one of the spirits of the elements of harmony, she deserved to know. One of the what now? Calamity questioned. He and Velvet Remedy were standing with me, along with Spike, Ditsy Do, and the floating sprite bot that channeled homage. I opened my muzzle to attempt to explain, but Spike suggested we just show them. 10 minutes later, we were all standing before the wonder of the gardens of Equestria, the sun shining down through the mountain's natural chimney and glowing off the spine of the Crusader mainframe and its web of cables. The elements of harmony seemed to shine in the glow of Celestia's sun, resting on their pedestals. I had explained it all. Everything. Ditsy sat at the pedestal, holding the element of laughter, staring reverently at the necklace of the little balloon-shaped gem. Calamity was the first to speak. The spirit of loyalty. He seemed overwhelmed. That's a lot. I'll try to live up to that. You already do, I assured him. The elements of harmony require many things, Spike reminded them, but they don't require you to be perfect. Kindness. Velvet Remedy sounded faint. But, are you sure? She leaned closer to me, speaking hesitantly. In case you haven't noticed, Pip, I can be a bitch sometimes. I thought back to Velvet's kindness to the dying Alicorn at Maripony, to her taking a stance against attacking the Hellhounds, to her holding Silverbell back in the barn. It had taken me far too long to recognize who was right in front of me, to see both my friends were who they were. In truth, I should have seen it back in Tempony Tower, when they explained how they felt about each other, both of them expressing what they saw in the other in terms of their own virtues. Yes, I affirmed. I'm sure. But what about Fluttershy? Velvet Remedy pleaded. The dragon answered. The elements of harmony are passed on, sometimes, even while the former bearers are still alive. It happened with Celestia and Luna. You're not taking it from her. This is natural. You mean, even if she comes back? Spike blinked. If who comes back? Celestia? Fluttershy. What? Velvet Remedy explained. We can save Fluttershy. Bring her back. Maybe. It's risky, but... Fluttershy's dead, Spike said, sounding fairly certain. No, Velvet Remedy corrected him. Fluttershy is a tree. Ditsy Do fluttered over, landing between us. She kicked off her chalkboard and took a piece of chalk in her muzzle, scribbling, "What's going on?" Velvet Remedy thinks Fluttershy is a tree, Spike explained. Ditsy Do cocked her head, one eye focusing on Velvet, while the other seemed to stare up at Spike. She rubbed her hoof on the chalkboard and wrote, Fluttershy was a friend, Ditsy added. You know she was a pony, not a tree, right? She's not a tree, Velvet, Spike insisted. But she is a tree, Velvet Remedy exclaimed. She turned to Calamity and me for support. Yep, Calamity said. Killing joke got her, I explained, affirming. Fluttershy's a tree. It took Spike and Ditsy Do quite a bit of time to process that. It was some pony they knew, a good friend, particularly to Spike, one of his mares. The idea that she was still alive, and that she might be saved, was a lot to take in. Meanwhile, I had unpleasant news to break to the others. After tomorrow, your top priority will be to find the rest, or the other two ponies, with the virtues needed to use the element of harmony, and set off the gardens of Equestria. By your estimation, Calamity, you'll have about a year before things get really bad. I hope you can do it by then. Wait. Calamity waved a hoof. Y'all said that like you're not coming with us. My heart felt like it was being squeezed. I'm not. I said, feeling tears. I can't. I explained it to them, as I had to life bloom, that the single Pegasus project needed a pony, and that saving Equestria required that pony to stay. Why you? Velvet complained. I sighed heavily. Because of all this, I glanced around at the gardens of Equestria. Because in the end, I'm expendable, and you're not. Not to us, Velvet insisted. It's okay, I consoled her softly. It's the right thing for me to do. She smiled, tears dripping down from my cheeks. I finally know what my virtue is. It's not fair, she whined. It doesn't matter what is unfair, Zenith had once told me. It still is. Zebra wisdom. Velvet Remedy leaned onto Calamity and cried. Calamity wrapped a wing around her. I agree with Velvet. You ain't expendable. You're all a big damn hero, and our dearest friend. He tipped off his hat. Y'all do what you have to do, but you take this with you. I want you to have it. Seeing Calamity's gift, Velvet Remedy floated out the Fluttershy orb. And this, from me. 1 year. Spike's head jerked towards us. That's insane. I've been looking for over 200 years. And Little Pips found 4 of us in just under 2 months. Calamity smiled, looking at Spike with idle eyes. Perhaps y'all are doing it wrong. Ditsy Doo held up her chalkboard. He found Little Pip. Spike sputtered, stared, and slapped his palm across his eyes, dragging his hand down his snout, bending it until it slipped from his hand and snapped back with a long boing. I've been so stupid. What? I'm so sorry. Spike looked at me apologetically. You're not unimportant, Little Pip. You're the most important part. What? No. I need to be unimportant. I knew my virtue, and it wasn't any of those, the elements of harmony, we're looking for. I told you that yours wasn't the group that was needed, because it was obvious to me that you and Steelhooves weren't ever going to be the bearers. He explained rapidly. But it takes more than just being loyal or honest to be a bearer. Oh crap. You're going to make it more complicated now? Just like it doesn't require that the bearers be perfect paragons of their virtues. There's more to it than that. He looked at us all. It means it's not for the destined few. Just happens to live all in Ponyville. Fluttershy, Applejack, Rarity. I'm sure there were plenty of ponies with the same virtues. It wasn't enough to just have the virtues. That wasn't what made them suitable to be the bearers. It was only when they accepted the call to act and became friends in the process that they became worthy in the eyes of the elements. The elements have eyes now? Calamity questioned, taking it a little bit too literally. I've seen it before. The elements will work for ponies who don't possess the right virtues, true, or who aren't friends. But they also don't work for ponies who aren't willing to stand up and truly fight against disharmony and evil. They have to fight the good fight, Homage agreed. Spike continued. It was when they all stepped into the Everfree Forest, braving it together, that they truly started to become friends. Well now, Calamity said, I reckon any set of good ponies who are willing to brave danger and face down evil together are likely to become friends. Exactly, Spike agreed. There's a word for accepting that call to action. Galvanize. I was lost again. Spike turned to look at me. I was so fixated on how it happened with Twilight Sparkle that I forgot. But even Nightmare Moon thought the spark didn't work, and she was Luna, who, with Celestia, had been a former bearer. The only way she wouldn't have known better was if the very nature of the spark changes over time. I began to glean where this was heading. I opened my muzzle to protest, but the dream words of Twilight Sparkle and her friends floated through my mind. It's happening differently this time, isn't it? Well, duh. Do you think it was the same when it was just Celestia? Same as boring. I reckon it's different every time. Last time, it happened inside Twilight. Last time, the spark was an epiphany. This time, the spark is a pony. Spike stared at me. Little Pip, you're the spark. But what? How? A different kind of spark. Damn, Calamity whined. When the 5 are present, a spark will cause the 6th to be revealed. As every pony turned to him, he grinned sheepishly. Hey, I was paying attention. I dropped to the floor, my head swimming in clouded confusion, then suddenly clearing, like the little pony in my head had performed a sonic raid boom. At the moment, I finally realized what most of you probably figured out right from the prologue. The true meaning of my cutie mark. A feature not to be forgotten. Pipbucks keep track of the location of tagged objects or people. If a pony somehow got lost, it could help find them. Like I had found the Ministry mares. Their stories, which cried out to be remembered. And through the statuettes, created through rarity sacrifice, the mares themselves. Like I had found Velvet Remedy, even without the aid of a tag, and like how I had found each of my friends. And a whole lot of good, heroic people, many of whom were gathered in the main room of this very cave. I had gotten my cutie mark when I had found the little foal and reunited him with his parents. The first worthwhile thing I had ever done in my life. My special talent was finding the right people. But don't this mean we still need little Pip? Calamity asked suddenly. We ain't got before. Calamity answered with a hesitant but conviction-filled no. She smiled sadly, wiping tears from her eyes. Have you seen the next room? Little Pip has done her part. We know where to start looking. The lovely, charcoal-coated unicorn looked up at Homage's Spritebot. Even if the other 2 aren't in the room, we know where to look next. We look to each pony who has been galvanized to action, to fight the good fight, by the example of the Lightbringer that DJ Pone 3 has beamed into every corner of Equestria. Today, a spectacular explosion of effervescent purple ripped through the New Hope solar array. Now that's how we do it down in the wasteland. Calamity whooped as the defense ray fell silent. The rust-colored buck's well-placed explosion had severed both the power connections to the active dishes and the nighttime reserve batteries as well. Fortunately, he was all but an expert at repairing things, and the knowledge of how to dismantle them came with it. Plus, he had come with a full sack of explosive loot from the Overcast, and one special little surprise. Calamity sniffed the air. Well, what do you know? Looks like it's the end of the Empire, with radishes. Above, Spike roared, signaling his thanks as he turned to engage the raptor Nuticulant. A blast of yellow light scorched Calamity's mane and burned his right ear. The bulk of the grazing shot hit the wall of the solar array next to him. Calamity spun, searching the air above for spaces between the solar towers. He had flown into the solar hope array with several Pegasi on his tail. Practiced in stealth, he was able to lose them long enough to rig the detonation. He had hoped the explosion would keep their attention as he made his escape. He spotted the 2 Enclave Pegasi as they opened fire. They weren't power-armored elite flighters, just recruits on guard duty. Calamity dove for cover, darting between towers, his recently healed wing aching badly, protesting the workout, and his body was beginning to feel the lack of sleep from the night before. If they cornered him, he was dead. Or they were. Most likely, the latter. He didn't want to kill these ponies. That meant running away. Or hiding. More shots passed around, above and below him. One struck his armor, just above his battle saddle. Damn it. If he could just lose the damn pursuit. He spotted a door. It could be a dead end, trapping him. Or it could be the perfect place to hide. Or even an escape route. Clemedy made a snap decision. Dodging and wheeling, he pulled his attackers further away. Then the moment he had some cover, he made a hard loop around for the door, his wings screaming in protest, threatening to fail. Clemedy reached the door, only to find it was locked. "I think he flew back this way," he heard one of the guards say. "Gall fucking dang it." Clemedy heard a heavy barrage of magical energy erupt somewhere overhead. He looked up to see Spike tearing into the plasma cannons of the Raptor Nocticular. As he watched, one of the smaller guns got a horrifically lucky shot, sending a beam of deadly magical energy right into Spike's right eye. The dragon howled, twisting as he slipped off the Raptor, tumbling out of sight. The door behind him opened, a guard pony flying out to sea. Clemedy bucked him over the head, knocking him unconscious, then dragged him back through the door, closing it behind him. The rust-colored pony's eyes went wide as he stared at the shelves of tiny, glowing alien energy cells, each about 1/100th of the size of the alien batteries used for the Star Blasters. Above the shelves was a placard, reminding the Enclave Pegasi, "Remember, you are the first and only line of defense between Equestria and the things that fall from above." Holy shit. Last night. "I'm so sorry," I told Homage, my voice trembling. My friends were all off making their own preparations. It was just me and her. Me, along with the sprite bot, in a secluded corner of the cave. "For what?" Homage's voice was soothing. "You did good. I'm sorry for leaving. And because I thought of the dead, all those I did not save back in the Everfree Forest. Not nearly good enough. Stop focusing on the few you couldn't save, and remember that they all would have been dead if it weren't for you." Homage chided. "You saved the wasteland from taint, and not just what would have been spilled. By obliterating both Maripony and Red Axe Cathedral, you protected Equestria from all this happening again. And if you have to count, be sure to count all the ponies whose lives won't be ended in horror or murder because of the evils you have put to an end." I wept. "I'm not coming back." "I know," she replied, her voice slightly tinny, but still the most beautiful thing in all of Equestria. I grasped the sprite bot between my forehooves, holding it closer and leaning my forehead against its grill, while horn brushing against one of the antennas. "What's the most important thing I gave you, little Pip?" I was surprised by the questions. "It's not the orgasms, is it?" she prodded. "No," I quickly insisted. "It's..." I paused, trying to find the words. "The solace." "Well," Homage told me through the sprite bot, "then I think you're a very silly pony." I blinked back tears. "What?" "You're about to plug yourself into the central control for all the towers," she pointed out. "The same towers I use for my broadcasts. You're not leaving me, not where it counts. The SPP is what I do." I hadn't thought of it that way." "And you'll have access to the entire network," she added. "You'll be able to watch over all of Equestria." I blinked. The little pony in my head made a quick note to access the records as soon as possible and check in on my friends, especially Zenith and Ditsy Doo. I would need to see what happened in the battle for Philadelphia. The central hub should have at least a few recent hours of stored data. "You're not going to be losing me at all. We'll be even closer than ever." Then, bemusedly, she noted, "Although, I guess this means I'll need to find a second home." "What?" I asked softly. still processing the new reality. Someplace I can modify the way I want, so I can take my showers outside. Huh? Why would you do that? To enjoy the sunlight? I opened my muzzle to protest. It didn't seem safe. A monster or a raider with a rifle. You know, where you can watch. Thud. From the floor, I whimpered. Have I ever mentioned how evil you are? Today. Imagine when the battle's won, and we raise our faces to the sun. Velvet Remedy's voice sang sweet and defiant in my earbloom as I galloped down the gleaming white halls of the Enclave Science Center, protected by the field of the MG Stealth Buck 2. She was singing to all of Equestria now, the entire wasteland. Wherever there was a radio, they were hearing her voice. The song was a rousing anthem, something to embolden the spirits of the Equestrian fighters, to give them strength. Equestria will live forever. Something to galvanize. I reached the cell block within a few minutes of the invisibility spell to spare. A quick sweep of the area told me all I needed to know. The cell doors had no accessible locks. They were operated entirely from a terminal in a guarded office. It had a cloud interface. Fortunately, I could do those now. I slipped into the guard room and started hacking while the two guards were busy talking about the attacking dragon. My ears perked when one of them claimed the defense grid had gone down. My heart leapt. Calamity had been successful, which meant the albino hellhound's little lesson in explosives had probably paid off. Maybe it was a good thing I didn't drink that glowing soda after all. I hate to think what it would have done to my insides. The password was invincible. Right. The terminal brought up the door controls, as well as a host of guard alerts. Most of them were from the last 20 minutes I had to do with the currently ongoing attack. One of them was not. Disposal Order, number 34. Subject, Fluffykins. I did not need to read it. I knew what it was. The order was dated this morning, 3 hours ago. Assuming the guards here weren't any swifter than they appeared, that meant Fluffykins the Warclaw was still alive, and that the Enclave was about to execute her. After all, their Hellhound control had been field-tested and battle-tested successfully. They didn't have any need for her anymore. It was with a sense of justice, bordering on pleasure, that I opened her cell door, then moments later trotted past, floating a present across the gulf of clouds to the small metal platform she was confined to. A present from a friend, I called out as my invisibility failed. Part of me wanted to linger, if only to see enough of Fluffykins, open it, and make sure she realized what she could do with it now. There was a note with the present, but I wasn't certain Fluffykins could read. But I couldn't do any of that. There was no time. No looking back. I could only hope that I had made a difference, that I had given her a way out that was better for her than what she had been given before. I wanted to do the right thing. Last night, I had a big day ahead of me, and the talk with Homage had wrung the last of the energy out of me. I really just wanted to sleep. The party in the main chamber was not cooperating. I could feel the heavy pounding of drums as much as I could hear them, and Velvet Remedy's chocolate-sweet vocals swam into my ears. Tonight was the last night before a big battle, one that would define the future of Equestria, and many of them might not be coming back. The party had been Silverbelt's idea, naturally, but none of them were going to spend their last night reading a good book. Raise your hoof, Velvet Remedy's voice called out repeatedly, part of the famous Vinyl Scratch and Pinkie Pie duet. I tried to bury my head under the pillow. Apparently, Spike had a lot of pillows. Hey, little Pip! Spike poked his head into the Gardens of Equestria chamber, where I had slipped away. Silverbell's starting to pin the tail on the pony. Wanna play? I groaned. Whoa, deja vu, Spike said. You should really join everyone. It's the last night before... You know. You should spend it with your friends. I groaned again, but tossed off the pillow and sat up. Maybe Spike was right. Against my real wishes, I followed him back to the very bright, very noisy main chamber. I was promptly swept up in the games and festivities. There was pin the tail, and pillow fighting, and piñatas, toy races, and table tennis. A bookshelf had been turned over and used for a snack table, covered in every sort of preserve-laden, century-old sweet that anyone could get their hoof on, including a mound of MOM-approved snack cakes. Velvet Remedy, in all her glory, was belted out a one fierce dance tune after another, her horn providing full musical accompaniment and a dazzling light show. I danced with more ponies and griffins and zebras in one night than I had ever imagined I would in a lifetime. And the little pervert in my head got a fair helping of flank staring during the conga line. And there were presents. Very special presents crafted by Lifebloom, who had spent most of the day studying up on Spell in the Box, cloud-walking presents. Most importantly, it was fun. That night, that party, I think it was the most pure fun I had ever enjoyed in my life. Spike had been right. This was better, and so much more important than sleep. These were the moments of joy with my friends. At the end of the party, Lifebloom passed me one last present, wrapped in a pretty bow. "This is what you asked for," he told me. "I need to go back. I'm hitching a flat with Ditsy Doo and Lionheart. If I'm going to make it to Ten Pony Tower in enough time to give the little speech I prepared, I need to go now." I floated the gaily wrapped present into my back. "Thank you." "Who's that for?" Calamity asked, trotting up to me as Lifebloom trotted away, swiftly moving to where Ditsy Doo was once again saying goodbye to Silverbell. A few hours should be more than enough time for her to get her glow on, and she hadn't been about to leave before Silverbell's party. "It's a gift for Fluffy Kittens," I told him. Calamity sighed. "Lil Pip, you know we ain't gonna have time for that." Calamity was right. We each had our targets within Navarro, and we had planned our attacks to avoid the barracks. We had to move quickly. No time for sightseeing. But, just this once, I told him. I want to do right by one of them. Calamity frowned, shaking his orange mane. Little flakes of color rained out of it. "You ain't gonna be saving her, Lil Pip. You let that monster loose, and she'll rip through every pony she sees, till they put her down." He pointed at the box. "This ain't gonna give her life back." "I know," I confided. "But if she's still alive, it's what she'd want. She was a Warclaw. She wouldn't want her life to end imprisoned and tortured to death. Who would? And when did you start fancying the wishes of hellhounds into your plans?" I looked into Calamity's eyes. When I saw how Autumn Leaf treated them. "Well, ouch." He winced. Calamity gritted his teeth. "That was a little low. I know he was a mass-murdering bastard and needed to be put down, but he was still my brother, and I mourned his loss." I knew Calamity felt the pain of his brother's death, but the idea that Calamity might be in mourning hadn't really sunk in. "I'm sorry," I said regretfully. "Well," he replied, accepting the apology. I asked. "You got confetti in your mane," I told him. "You do too." Today. "Hold it right there, you traitorous thieving scumbag. We're under attack and you think it's a good time to pilfer supplies? You're stealing from the Enclave, you worthless shit. No pony steals from the Enclave." Calamity had just finished relatching his saddlebags when the voice tore through the air behind him. "Hello, Dad." He turned around to face his father. The drill sergeant froze, staring. Calamity stared back, eyes locked with his father. Then he sighed. "You know, I always reckoned I'd have loads to say to you if and I never had the chance," he said wearily. "But now that I do, I ain't got nothing." The older stallion glared. Calamity. Then he raged. You! You're the one attacking your country, your own kind. You're with the damn dragon? You! Calamity simply shook his head. There are so many things wrong with that. I don't know where to start. And you came here, killed ponies. Why? Just to steal? Calamity glanced back at his saddlebags before answering. I came here to save ponies, Dad. And these are just a little insurance policy. Something where my friends better leave here alive if the Enclave ever wants them back. He pushed past his father, heading for the door. Hold it right there, you traitorous piece of filth, the drill sergeant bellowed. Or what? Calamity asked. You ain't gonna shoot me. For all your faults, you ain't Autumn Leaf. I'll beat your ass till you wish I had. Calamity looked back at his father, considering this. Yeah, nope. I'm pretty sure you ain't nothing but a loud old buck. All bark and no bite. Calamity offered, but feel free to prove me wrong. And beating I'll trounce you. And that'll probably lose you whatever respect your troops had left for you. He turned away, walking towards the door. Bye, Dad. That's it? Calamity's father swooped past to block the door. Ain't you got nothing to say for yourself? Yeah. Calamity cut him off before he could find more colorful, derogatory language to spew. You nope. Then, with a second thought, he said, I'm sorry Mom died. I'd have said something about how badly you dealt with it, but I reckon you already know. My best friend pushed past his father and opened the door. You got her mane, you know, his father said softly, letting his traitorous son pass. I really liked her mane. Calamity spread his wings and flew away, saying nothing. This morning. So, bark and saw, I asked, feeling ready to ride a dragon. Really not comfortable with this, Spike reiterated, as he lowered himself down enough for the Hellhound sniper to climb onto the makeshift saddle Calamity had cobbled together while I was talking privately with Homage. Within minutes, we were flying over the clouds. Spike had me in his hands, and I was floating Velvet, Remedy, and Calamity behind us. My Pegasus friend could fly on his own, but not well enough or fast enough to keep up with a full-grown dragon. The world above the cloud curtain was breathtaking. The air was crisp and warm in Celestia's light. The sun gleamed off the clouds, a rolling canvas, bright, clean, white. I felt a little wretched, knowing that I was bringing war here. As we passed over mountaintops, I spotted one that looked like it had been gutted. All that remained was a gleaming skeleton, like the mountain was a carcass whose bones had been picked clean. I called over to Calamity, pointing it out. That there was stable 98, he informed us. Weren't many Pegasus stables. Most of the ones we were built into the mountains. Clouds ain't much protection against megaspales, and Pegasus have more need of vertical space than most ponies, calling for different design. The bare, exposed remains slipped behind us. Enclave stripped all the ones they could find down to the last plate of metal ages ago, he added, and they've been taking what's left from the main frameworks as needed. Minutes later, we caught sight of a Pegasus city. The stark contrast between those buildings, gorgeous monuments to the past, and the ruins that I used to pick through, broke my heart. It was a window back to the beautiful, sunlit past of Equestria. It was much more than a memory orb. But something felt wrong. The city, in all its splendor, was achingly hollow. The ancient towering buildings and floating rainbow waterfalls dwarfed its shattering of inhabitants in both scale and grandeur. The Pegasi felt like termites in a tree, or like mice, carving out their own little mouse holes within a much greater home. It was not the thriving civilization I had envisioned. Spike lowered into the clouds, the dampness plastering my armor and coat, and matting down my mane. The vision of the perceived world immediately gone, replaced by a haze of gray and white. We would travel the rest of the way obscured by the cloud curtain, until we were virtually under the base itself. 10 minutes ago. Brilliant, blazing light erupted across the sunlit skies over Philadelphia. Beams of purest sunlight, thin as tree trunks, rained down from the crisp blue like white-hot javelins, incinerating everything they touched. The Twilight Society guided the Megaspell's power judiciously. Instead of bringing the Megaspell's full power to bear, destroying the landscape, they wielded it with surgical precision. Celestia 1 struck down the worst, the most dangerous, on both sides. The goal was not to win the battle, but to end it, and to save as many of the innocent and the helpless as possible. In the end, the ponies in the ritual chamber decided they had chosen to do the right thing after all. Not the pleasant thing. Not something, if they had their preference, that they would ever do again. Not something that would make it easier to sleep at night. But the right thing. Right now. My hoof hit the hard red barrier, sparks of energy crackling out of it. The shield felt as solid as a steel wall under my hoof. I reared up, sliding my hoof against the shield, surrounding the SSP central hub once again, and I fell on my tail when I rebounded. I wasn't going through. But I had been so sure. I was 3/5 alicorn. More importantly, I had something no pony who had attempted this before brought. A perfect replica of the soul of Rainbow Dash. Of all the Ministry mares, actually. Right here in my saddlebags. If the Bones of Luna hadn't been enough to get through, if the Enclave's goal to use the severed head of Rainbow Dash had been attempted and failed, then it stood to reason that the shield's bypass was designed to register something much more important than mere genetics. I had to be the one who could get in. I had been promised this. I had worked it all out. This was my purpose. My destiny. I began to cry. Right now, so many were fighting, probably dying, because they had faith in my plan. Faith in me. How could I have been wrong? Again. Sunshine and rainbows, she had promised. I heard the sound of explosions and massive energy weapon discharges from the remaining raptors. My cry became weeping. I had put so much, risked so much, and on what? Don't listen to her, the potted plant had insisted. She just wants you to fail. Oh goddesses, what have I done? Pinkie Pie's voice came back to me. Everything will end in sunshine and rainbows, she announced gleefully. As long as you're willing to face the fire, that is. Face the fire. I looked up at the heavens, the bright blue of an endlessly deep sky. What fire? I whimpered. I had already been through the Everfree Forest. I had faced Canterlot, the Enclave, and so much more. Haven't I already been through enough? Can't I please just win now? A dark shadow washed over me. As long as you're willing to face the fire. Spike! I shouted, waving my forearms desperately. I need you! As the huge purple dragon banked and landed, I wanted to run to him, wanted to ask him if he trusted Pinkie Pie, trusted her predictions and her advice. But I didn't. It wouldn't matter if he trusted her or not. This wasn't about him. This was my leap of faith. What you need, little Pip? He asked. He looked bad. Raptors had gotten several good strikes on him. His scales were scorched or slagging over much of his body. He was having a difficult time standing up straight. Spike had lost several of his scales and was bleeding from the blistering pit where his right eye had been. I walked up to the shield and turned towards the wounded dragon, pressing my body back against the hard field of crackling energy. I need you to breathe on me, I told him flatly. What? Spike roared. Please, just do it. Quickly. No! Spike reared back. You'll die! I'm not going to kill you! Please. You have to. No! Oh, goddesses. Why are you making me do this? I lied. I told him. What? He looked confused, hurt, and deeply worried. In the middle of all this, I lied about Twilight Sparkle. I confessed, my heart ripping apart. I told him the truth, the whole truth, every awful, soul-wrenching detail. All, Spike stammered, finally, his voice just a whisper. All this time. His face was an apocalyptic storm of emotions. He hated me, and he hated me for making him hate me. In the end, he did the only thing he could do. He roared. I was blinded by the blast of greenish flame. The pain was beyond unbearable. I screamed, and my lungs filled with fire. I could feel my skin bubbling and searing away. I tried to hold on to my most precious memories, the memories of homage, but one by one, those memories burned away like my flesh, consumed in searing agony, until just one was left. The memory of homage's last words to me as DJ Pon 3, addressing me across the wasteland. You are my message. Then that too was gone, and everything else, even pain. Footnote: maximum level.